Okay, perfect. We are now live. Welcome, everyone, to the Be More podcast, where we inspire you to be a little bit more of every role within the Salesforce ecosystem and beyond. Today is a very special episode because we are going a little bit broader than the direct Salesforce ecosystem because it is our first live streamed episode. So hopefully there's a couple of people watching us live. And if you have any questions during our conversation, then feel free to pop those in the chat box and we will do our best to answer any of those as they come across. So for today's episode, we are talking about what it takes to be more Heroku Evangelist. And I'm joined today by Errol. So if you could start by introducing yourself to our audience, please.
Yeah, great. Thanks. And thank you, Tom, for allowing me to come on and be the first live guest. It's quite an honor. I am Errol Schmidt. I'm the CEO of a company called Reinteractive, and we are a Heroku consulting partner for Salesforce. We're specialists in a programming language called Ruby on Rails, and we use Heroku to do that.
Okay, awesome. So I'm at this point, I feel like I'm a little bit biased towards everything Salesforce, right? So break it down for me. What is Heroku as a platform? What can it offer? And
Mhm.
maybe explain a little bit for people like me in the audience that don't necessarily know what is Ruby on Rails.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's start with Heroku. So Heroku is what we call platform as a service. So it's a place where you put your web applications to run. So if you're familiar with AWS or Azure or any of those sorts of platforms, Heroku is a type of that. Really, it actually sits on top of AWS, so it's built on AWS infrastructure underneath. But of course, it's a Salesforce product. It was acquired by Salesforce many years ago as an additional thing to be able to allow people to expand and extend what they're running in Salesforce. So the really cool thing about Heroku is it has a tool called Heroku Connect, which allows
Hmm.
us to match things that sit inside Salesforce, inside the core platform, to Heroku. So, for example, if you have, let's say, a contact, so that contact has first name, last name, email, phone number, etc. And you want to have those inside your web application. Maybe you want your users to be able to change their phone number or to see their name and so on when they log in. So
Hmm.
we use Heroku Connect to synchronize what sits inside Salesforce to our database inside Heroku, and then they will be synchronized together. We can update the phone number on the Heroku side and it'll update inside Salesforce or vice versa. And that gives us a lot of flexibility. And what it means is we can start to expose the data that we want to expose out of Salesforce in our Heroku application. And of course, Heroku can scale to as large as we like. It can scale up to millions and millions of users, or we can have it as a relatively small application that sits inside an organization and just
Hmm.
serves a bunch of employees inside a company.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
your second question was what's Ruby on Rails? So Ruby on
Yes.
Rails is a programming language that we use to implement all of that. So Ruby on Rails has been around, well, I want to say 15 years mainstream. It's been around a little bit longer than that, but around 15 years, which is as long as my company Reinteractive has been around. So yeah, it's a very, very popular language for larger enterprise businesses. And it's, one of the bigger languages out there. It's one of the most used in that field.
Okay, awesome. Well, thanks for that. I'm looking forward to diving in a little bit more. And I'm curious now, as we were talking, you just reminded me of something. Have you had a play with the Trailhead badges that I think used to exist for Heroku? I'm pretty sure you could spin up a site and it had like a property search on it that was integrated with Salesforce. Have you played with any of those things?
I don't know that specific one, but
Yeah.
yes, I mean I've done a bunch of those trailheads. There are some really good tools that you can jump into to be able to implement Heroku Connect inside Trailhead and learn how to use it. The good thing about Heroku is, unlike AWS and some of its counterparts, is it's simple to set up and use. I actually did a demo of this at TDX earlier this year.
Hmm.
So at TDX you've got 40 minutes to do your session. So what I did is I spun up an instance of Heroku and Heroku Connect, set up the database, set up an entire application all live on stage. So it takes minutes to set up and to use, and it's very very simple to use.
Yeah. Was that TDX this year?
Yeah. hmm
Yeah. So
Yeah.
there was no, just to clarify, there was no agent force in your presentation
Oh,
at
there was
all.
Agent Force in the
Oh, okay.
presentation. Don't worry about that.
Yeah. I was thinking, oh, there's something missing here, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh no, there
Okay.
was. I spent that time to get up to the Agent Force bit because
Right.
what I was actually demoing was how you can use an agent inside Salesforce to manipulate some data, which then flows through into your Heroku application, basically.
Oh, nice. So kind of
Yeah.
like a connected journey.
Exactly. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah, that's right. But actually, it's actually really simple to do once you know how to set up an agent in Salesforce. It's really
Hmm.
simple to use the output of that to manipulate something inside Heroku.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Well, let's dive into kind of the first of the questions, really, which is kind of introducing your role as a Heroku evangelist. Like, how would you define that or describe that to our audience?
It's an interesting role actually because it's one that at Reinteractive we've taken on for a number of years. Heroku has not always been at the forefront of the Salesforce lineup. It's taken a
Hmm.
backseat for many many years, um, and because we have built our business around Heroku and Ruby on Rails, it's something we've always pushed. It's something we've always used. New customer comes into Reinteractive, they go onto Heroku. It's that simple. So talking it up and understanding it and making sure my team are experts in Heroku has always been important. Um, what's changed though is maybe the last year and a half, 2 years, is the positioning of Heroku within Salesforce has changed dramatically. So it's gone from a um, uh, small tool that sat underneath platform inside
Hmm.
Salesforce to now its own business unit. It's got a
Right.
very, very large team. So a massive marketing team. It's got a new technical team. Well, not new technical team, there's existing ones, but added
Yeah.
to, and new account executives across the world. So it's got a new position in the ecosystem, and that speaks to its future as part of what Salesforce would want to roll out for agents and AI. Now, I don't know exactly what that is and exactly what that
Hmm.
means for the future, except that it
Yeah.
plays a larger part than it does today.
Okay.
So, yeah. So, my position as an evangelist then is I get to be part of that journey and I get to talk that up. And, that becomes important to me. There's not a lot of Heroku partners around the world. Like it's a small group. When we go to partner meetings and partner
Hmm.
events, there's not a lot of people at them. So, so I get to, be at the front of that. I get to be able to influence and have discussions about the roadmap, and be in a position where I get to test and assist with that roadmap. So that's part of that journey.
Okay. Awesome. And maybe just again educating me really, uh, in terms of how it compares to the Salesforce ecosystem and MuleSoft and Slack and Tableau that have their own community programs. Is there an equivalent for Heroku, and how is that structured?
Yeah, there is, and it has its own group of partner managers, which is very useful. Mostly newer to the team, so I think
Hmm.
that's still being established. Building up that community and building up that side of things is still being established. Like it's not that easy to be part of a community where, in the area that I'm in, the region I'm in, which is APAC, I'm in Melbourne in Australia, that there aren't really other Heroku developers around. Like
Right.
I know of maybe two other companies in Australia that do it well as specialties. So it's not really something there's a big community around. When I go to events like to Dreamforce or to TDX, I see exactly the same people, and it's great to see
Mm.
them. But we haven't got the same community. I go to Slack events just in a comparison, and it's a
Mm.
very different feel. It's a very different vibe because we're just not quite there yet.
Yeah. All right. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, break it down for us then. Someone who kind of identifies as a Heroku evangelist, what type of other roles does that person work with? Like, is it similar to the roles that you would get in the Salesforce ecosystem, like architect, admin, developer? How do those types of things translate to the Heroku side of things?
Yeah, look, I think most of my activities in terms of that role of being an evangelist is enabling. So I have one of my team members, Sandra, who spends almost her entire work week contacting account executives and booking in meetings. And then I attend those meetings and tell the account executives what Heroku is, how it fits
Hmm.
into their tool belt, how they can sell it, what to look out for, how to find opportunities, and I do several of those a week. I mean, there's thousands and thousands of account executives across the world. Most of them know little about Heroku, if they know anything at all. Like there's some that, have a few accounts and so on and will know about it, but there's very few. So I spend a lot of time doing that enablement and helping them to understand how does it fit into the current group of things that they might have to sell or might be looking out for. Um, and sometimes that results in business for me, and sometimes it doesn't, but it helps, the bigger scheme of things.
Mm, okay. And in terms of the people that are kind of implementing the tool, what type of roles do you see on that side of the fence?
Look, again, it's mostly the account executives. Like, sometimes we'll speak to
Hmm.
solution engineers and people like that, but it's mostly the account executives because they're the ones that are on the cold face. They're talking to the clients, they're understanding the
Yeah.
client's needs, doing the bulk of the discovery. And so they're the ones that are coming to me and saying, "Hey, I've got this problem that I need to solve. And, I think Heroku might be a fit for that." And then it's up to me to understand from them. From there, I usually go straight to a client and we'll have the discussion with them. What do they
Hmm.
need? How would that work? Are we actually talking about the right tool for them? Because I don't, I'm not interested in selling something that isn't necessary for them either.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Well, that's great because it's really important to have that relationship with your clients. You're ultimately working for the benefit of your client.
Oh, yeah.
And, sometimes
Yeah.
you might have to say, well, actually, Heroku isn't right here. Maybe X is better instead, right?
Right. No, that's exactly right. In fact, we've got, community licenses, for example, which can fit
Mm.
some of the same space. So I have to be cautious to not oversell or to sell something that's not necessary. I'll give you an example of that actually. I have a
Mm.
large client in Australia. Um, in financial space, and they're a large Salesforce user, and we do a lot of work for them. But it's Ruby on Rails work. It's not Heroku work. Actually, they don't use Heroku. But they came to me and said, we want to rebuild our platform for our team that answers the calls, the service inquiries, that sort of thing. So it's a team of about 100 people in Australia on the phones all the time, and they had a piece of software they were using that was not really fit for purpose, and it wasn't
Hmm.
correctly flowing information into Salesforce. And so it was like this disparate thing. So they were like, okay, we've got to unify this data and have our call center staff using software that's directly sitting inside Salesforce. So they came to me and said, is Heroku a good solution for that? And we reviewed it, and the truth is, it wasn't. Um, because to build something in Heroku would have been fine, but cost wise and time wise, it wasn't an efficient way to solve that problem. A community license for it's just 100 people. It's not really going to expand outside that 100. Like maybe they'll
Mm.
expand to 110, 120, but it's not going to go to tens of thousands of people. It's never going to be outside the organization. And they just need a really simple user interface, so something that actually sits right inside of Salesforce was ideal for them. Just remove all of the fields they don't need, just leave the fields that they actually want. And
Hmm.
then that worked perfectly. And they implemented that and it's working great.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's great. Thanks for sharing that with us. And thinking about this now as a Heroku evangelist, do you focus on Heroku full time, or do you do, as you kind of already alluded to, kind of side projects in just Ruby for Rails and other things as well?
Yeah. Look, I mean, primarily we're Ruby on Rails. Like
Yeah.
that's what we do. Using Heroku is a natural part of that simply because Heroku was actually the application platform that was written for Ruby on Rails. Like when Ruby on Rails was first developed as a programming language, the developers of the language and the initial users were like, the cloud offerings at the time were very complex, difficult to use. They wanted something that was as simple for them as the actual programming language. So Heroku was actually developed for that purpose. So Ruby on Rails and Heroku are a perfect fit together. So we get two types of clients. One would be the brand new person. They just want an application built. They might come through Salesforce and they might come through a different way. Absolutely every time we put them onto Heroku, that's the
Yeah.
platform we love. It's the easiest one to work with. We do often get, however, clients that are already using Ruby on Rails. They're a legacy type application. They've been around for 10 years or something, and they typically will either be on Heroku or they'll be on AWS. And so we have to deal with whatever we get when it comes to
Yeah.
that. So yes, we look after AWS clients as well.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. And now thinking about this, and I think we've touched on this a little bit already, but if there's somebody listening to this and they're feeling inspired, right? What tips, advice would you give to that person who's kind of looking to start out on their own Heroku journey?
Yeah. Couple of things I would say is one, we spoke about the trailheads on Heroku. They're dead easy to use. They're dead
Mhm.
easy. Like you might think there's a barrier, in particular if you've been using anything like AWS in the past. Like there's complexity with those tools. There's difficulty, and it puts people off. Like AWS engineers, they study for months and months on their certifications, sometimes much, much longer. With Heroku, you can be up and running in an afternoon. Like, hit those trailheads and you'll be up and running in an afternoon, understanding Heroku and be able to use it in a production environment. Like it's
Mhm.
not that difficult to learn. There's exams that you can then do after that might take a little bit more work, but it's not a ton. So setting up and maintaining Heroku is not a difficult thing. It's intentionally easy to use. Um, the other thing that I'll say is based on the fact that there is a lot of team members within Heroku, there is quite a roadmap being developed to modernize the platform. That there is quite a future inside Heroku. So if you're a Salesforce partner or a developer of some kind looking to add more skill to your team, Heroku is a
Mhm.
great path to go down because there are quite a lot of people and they're eager to help you to get up and running as well. Like, become a partner, become part of the ecosystem. There's a lot sitting there.
Okay. And a bit of a maybe more technical leaning question now, but I'm always curious about these things. How can you actually get your hands on Heroku? Because I think historically you could sign up for a free trial or like a developer org like you would have in Salesforce. How
Yeah.
does that work now? Do you have to be a partner? Like, what's the situation there?
Right. Yeah. Okay. So, unfortunately, because of some bad actors, the free tier is not any longer available. It just got used by the wrong people for the wrong things. So,
Right.
so the free tier is not available unless you've got a .edu email address. Then you can jump into that. Otherwise, there's a very cheap tier, like from something in the order of about $5 a month. You can get started on Heroku. And you don't need enterprise licensing to get started. You can just go to Heroku.com and literally sign up using a credit card. So that's the easy path in. And all you need to get started is, two things. One is a dyno. So a dyno is like the compute part. It's the thinking part of Heroku. So it's where the
Mhm.
application actually sits and does all the work. And you need a database. Typically, the most applications that you're going to write these days, you need a database. Um, as long as you have those two things signed up for, and you can go on a free tier for, on a cheap tier for the database as well. So the price of entry is very, very cheap, and it's easy to get started. And so long as you know something about programming, you don't even have to know a whole lot these
Mm.
days. Like you can get started using some of the AI tools that are available and actually get something up and running in an afternoon, quite honestly.
Yeah,
So,
or a
yeah.
TDX session.
Yeah. Oh, that's
Yeah.
right. Yes. Yeah, I did a couple of those. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. Just follow along. Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right. Awesome. Well, that's fab. So thinking about this now as a journey, and you've been on your own journey, and we're all learning each and every day. Hopefully, you learn something new. If you were to start out again, is there anything you would change or do differently?
Yeah, that's a great question. I often think about that actually, Tom, because we're in a period of time right now where a lot of us are rethinking our strategies for business, for what we offer, and how we bring that to our clients. And our clients are thinking this too, like, what is
Mm,
the future? So, it's not even a matter of if you were to start again. For a lot of what we're doing, there is a rethink of everything going on. So, business wise, no, I don't think so. Like, how I structure the business is correct. I've got the core team members that I rely on day to day. I've got a large team of developers, and I
yeah.
employ those developers around the world so that I can cover an international market. So that part of it is absolutely correct. And no, I don't think I would change that. But there are some things that I have to consider for the future. Um, and I know it doesn't quite answer the question, but I
Yeah.
think it sort of does, because we are at a point of going, do I need to rethink things wholesale? It's not really
Mhm.
completely, but there are some things that I go, we've got to keep tabs on these things. In the developer world, there's a lot of interest in how much do these tools develop, and how much does that change the landscape. So if you're familiar with any of the code writing AI tools, you can write a piece of code. Like, if you have familiarity with a programming language, you
Mhm.
can use those tooling in the developer land. We call it pairing, which is working with another person when you're developing. Um, if you pair with one of those AI tools, you can increase efficiency by minimally 30%. And that's probably on the low end, actually. Like, you could probably increase development even faster than that. So we're using those tools internally, and every development company in the world is, or at least should be.
Yeah.
So we're getting work done faster, but for the same rate, if you know what I mean. Like, you
Yeah.
can't charge more because you're using those tools, right? So we have to consider, what does that mean? Here's something I know for sure. Absolutely. The requirement of software development is increasing in the future. More applications are needed. For sure, those AI tools are going to make life easier and easier. Will they ever replace developers? Not 100%, but by a large degree. That just means that the output of each developer is going to increase dramatically.
Mhm.
Um, and keeping tabs on companies like Salesforce and the direction that they're taking is super important. Like, in the past, it was probably okay to just go, there's the tool set. There'll be a minor update every 12 months or every quarter. And as long as you know what those are, it probably doesn't even matter, because some of those things will be, not even important. But today, every release, every update is important, and you know could completely change everything at every turn. And we see that. So you have to stay on your toes. You have to be, um,
Ready.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Awesome. And thinking about this now, if you were to define skills or attributes of somebody that's kind of leaning towards being a Heroku evangelist, what kind of personality traits or behaviors would you use to describe that person, do you think?
I think, just broadly, when we think of that term
Mm.
evangelist, we're generally talking about someone who likes to stand on a soapbox, that likes to talk. It defines a certain type of personality, an extroverted person. So I think if you were to consider being an evangelist, that is who you have to be. Going to as many events as you can, and I love doing those. Like, I think that's an important part of it. And then once you're at those events, it means talking to every person you can. It means going to all of the smaller after parties and events that you can.
Hmm.
Like, I love all of that, and I think it's really, really important. You have to love people. Like, you have to
Yeah.
like talking to people. So like in my role, I speak to a lot of developers, and developers like to sit behind a computer, and that's fine. They do it amazingly well, and it's not a skill that I particularly have. Like, I can program, but I'm not a developer. You know what I mean? Because there's a point where I go, I don't want to sit behind my computer anymore. I want to talk to a real person.
Yeah.
So broadly talking about that term evangelist, all of those things, you have to be
Mhm.
willing to jump um, on all of those channels in the world where people will listen, the social medias and the webinars and the podcasts and the live events and all of that sort of stuff, do all of
Yeah.
those. Specifically then when we're talking about a Heroku evangelist, well, I guess you have to know about Heroku. I guess you're going to have to know something about
Yeah.
that, and you're going to have to know about some programming that you can put into it, and you're going to have to know something about Salesforce as well, because obviously it's required to understand the ecosystem.
Mhm.
And something, I guess, Tom, that you would come across with every one of your guests is understanding Salesforce, the company, as well. What is the philosophy of Salesforce?
Mhm.
Understanding the community around Salesforce, which is extraordinary. For anybody that comes from other company ecosystems, to understand that Salesforce actually has real, genuine community is quite something. Do you know what I mean? I don't know, Tom,
Yeah.
if you've had to work with, I don't know, the Microsofts or the Adobes or anything like that. They have community for sure, and there'll be listeners telling right now thinking, oh, but I get it, but there is nothing quite like, I've got friends all over the world because of these events that I go to, and because of my connections in this world, and it's something else. Maybe
Mm.
I'm not even describing it properly.
No, I totally get that, and I totally get the power of like the Salesforce community and how it can bring people together. Like, I have friends all over the world now, and in fact, been negotiating with somebody that wants me to talk at their user group in Australia. And so
Right.
we're now
Okay.
negotiating like the right time of day. I think it's going to be 8 a.m. for me and 5 p.m. for them, or something like that. Like, but ultimately, like, we wouldn't know each other
Hmm.
if it weren't for the ecosystem,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So I can certainly speak to the power of that, and
Hmm.
ultimately bringing us together as individuals. And yeah, I think that's super powerful. And don't get me wrong, like, I've not been in any other kind of technology ecosystem quite like it, but I just know that the Salesforce ecosystem in particular is renowned for having that kind of special touch and magic. And that's certainly something that I hope that Salesforce continue to nurture, develop,
Hmm.
and support, because it is important and it does distinguish them from
Yeah.
other technologies as well, don't you think?
Oh, 100%. Yes. Yeah. It's something that it's an X factor that
Yeah.
you can't just wave a magic wand and have be there. Like, it's something that if you've earned it, it's
Mm.
important. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
like I see it, like I go to Ruby on Rails events as well, and I go to those around the world, and obviously people who program in Ruby on Rails, they're passionate about it, and there is a massive ecosystem around that, but it's not a corporate, you know. So to
Mm.
have that for a corporate entity, and for a group of products that are there as a for profit, it's that's different.
Yeah.
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 Exactly.
So in to answer the question, what does it take to be a Heroku evangelist? You have to know that and understand it and be part of that. You definitely can't be absent from that. You have to be part of it and contribute to that, and be as willing as possible. Like you just
Mhm.
said, if someone says, I need you to do an event, of course I'll do the event. Of course I will speak at 5 a.m.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you say that, because it is about 5 a.m. for you right now, isn't
Yes,
it?
we've just about to
Yeah.
hit 5 a.m. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Well, that's some dedication. Thanks for making the time. So, just thinking about this, right? If there was one thing you'd like to change or make people more aware of about Heroku in general, are there any misconceptions or myths or anything that you'd like to clarify for our audience?
So not so much a misconception, but there is a lack of education around Heroku. Like as I said before, I do a lot of enablements with account executives, and I love talking to people about Heroku,
Mm,
obviously. But the first question that is always asked, even by seasoned account executives, is what exactly is Heroku? How does it fit into the ecosystem? Like, very, very basic fundamental questions. And I'm okay with answering those, of course, but that's something that I would love to improve. Like no one ever says, what is Sales Cloud? No one ever says that. So elevating Heroku's profile so that it's more universally understood. And as a result, account executives, partners understand what an opportunity looks like. Here's the truth. Every company that uses Salesforce has a web-based application. Now, sometimes that's just their promotion. It's their storefront, so to speak, that, says
mhm.
here's who the company is. But a lot of times it's an application that does something as well. Maybe it's e-commerce, maybe it's something more unique and specialized for that company. But everybody has some sort of web application. Every one of those, if they're a Salesforce user, should be on Heroku. Like, there's millions of people that should be on Heroku, and those companies are all using something else. They're all using AWS or Azure or Google Cloud or whatever it might be. And, for some of them, okay, I get it. That's what you've always used, but there is a product that sits within the ecosystem for you.
Mhm.
There's a product that sits within that. You trust Salesforce with your data. Heroku sits within that trust.
Yeah. And I think quite importantly as well, plays nicely with Salesforce as well. Like the
That's
ability
right.
to expose
Yeah.
like your contact information or whatever it is, and then
Yeah.
update that and then write that back to Salesforce kind of seamlessly, right?
Right, exactly. And it also means, one less person to deal with when it comes to renewals and things like that as well. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, like
Yeah.
just speak to the same account executive who will do your renewal and, sign you up for the next 12 months. And, it does make life a little bit easier.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Awesome. Well, unfortunately, we are bringing today's episode to a close. But before we do go,
Yep.
what's a way for people to connect with you? And do you have any particular pieces of content that will perhaps help somebody get started on their Heroku journey? Or do you know of any content out there that's like particularly good for this area of technology?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the best ways to get onto me, you can go to our website, which is reinteractive.com. And we have a blog on there. There's a ton of articles on the subject of Heroku. We just published one yesterday on the next generation Heroku. So that's being modernized. There's a lot of information in there and a bunch of links as well, that'll help you understand what Heroku is and take you to all of the official Heroku websites on that as well.
Okay.
So that's a good way. Absolutely, you can get onto me on Twitter, or X, as they say, at
Yeah.
Reinteractive, or yeah. So and there's also a contact form on the website as well, so you can get onto me that way as well. So yeah,
Okay. All right, awesome. Well, thanks for your time today, and hopefully we will inspire some people tuning in to be more Heroku evangelists. So thanks again.
yeah. Thanks a lot, Tom.
Thank you.